Chapter 8, Motivation Without Self-Deception. And this is a really interesting chapter because it talks about acting. And I myself have experienced this, what she has experienced. So she had the theater bug and she wanted to be an actor. And when she wanted to be an actor, there were, people who really wanted to um, tell her, screw the odds, you can do it, you know, it's just another statistic. If you throw yourself into it with all your heart and soul, like, go for it. Then she looked at the statistics and she realized, oh my gosh, well, it's kind of bleak when you look at how many people want to, you know, enter and how many people actually get into it. This is in New York, by the way, and that's where it's like the highest population of people in the country. And there are a lot of people who kind of just they don't make it. And her argument is, look, make sure you're very aware of the odds. If you're aware of the odds and you go about it and be like, okay, now I need to use um, impractical optimism, then you're that's still not a good thing to do. And she explains later why, which is what I'm going to go over. Also, I'm trying something new with this. Um, I got the Audible version of this book as well. I played it in the beginning when I was reading, but then I decided, well, I might as well just also read it. I'll read it out loud myself as I'm going over it. But now I'm switching over and I'm like, well, no, let me hear the author actually, you know, say these things, and then maybe I can also, I can comment on it after. So that is the way that I'm doing it now. I think it might change things. I mean, obviously, you know, there might be nuances that change. I can really see how she makes her argument because she's the one who's talking, right? Um, so, yeah. So let's keep going. All right, so I want to make another mention here. So she mentions the idea of how somebody compares um, having absolute faith in yourself as jumping, making kind of like a cliffhanger, kind of like jump. Um, and if you have any doubt, the slightest hesitation is going to, make you fail and you'll fall into the abyss. So you need to have absolute faith, 100% faith. And Julia kind of like breaks it down and is like, well, there are so many other things you can do than just jump to that, other, platform. You can do so many other things. Maybe there's other platforms you can go down. It's not a do or die decision. And when you make it a do or die decision, you're kind of shutting down all these other possibilities that you could do. And in this next section that I just went over, an accurate picture of the odds helps you adapt your plan over time. I think it's all about adaptation. I think it's all about being able to, as you're going through your plan, things will change. The world will change. People will change, and you have to readjust accordingly. And if you're not aware and if you're not updated to the newest version of World 10.0 or whatever, then you're still going to be working off of a paradigm, or it might be a system that no longer works best for you. Um, VHS tapes are no longer being used right now. So does it make sense if you wanted to, for example, start a recording company that utilizes VHS tapes to record? You cross-wire karaoke and VHS tapes so that you can dub things. This is something that I used to do before, back when I was interested in acting. Just dubbing anime and stuff like that. But like, there's so things change, technology changes, and in this story, she mentions that the CEO for a company had lofty goals, but she had to change her plan, and I believe that is something about life. You have to constantly be aware of your surroundings and the changes that are going on in the world so you can optimize your strategy in life. In this next section, an accurate picture of the odds helps you decide how much to stake on success. It really goes into a story of somebody who never really considered adapting, never considered, their chances until it was too late. And they had to, it was kind of the failure business kind of story, you know. So basically, by comparing and contrasting both stories, um, I noticed one is with a successful woman and the other one is with an unsuccessful man, you know. And it seems like there's also a successful woman was African American, successful man seems to be I can't really assume that he's white, but it seems like that. So so I think that's really interesting. But in any case, though, uh, there's still two really great examples, and in the end, there is kind of like this idea of, you know, if you know that you have a 1 in 9 chance of winning versus a 9 out of 10 chance of winning, so it's like the whole ticket jar thing that I mentioned earlier. It would definitely help you make better judgment of what you want to plan, how you want to plan on taking certain risks. There's a video game that I'm playing called Sega Frontier, and in Sega Frontier or Saga Frontier, um, basically, if you look at the statistics, if you do certain actions in this JRPG, it increases your chances of leveling up a stat. And would it make sense to, if you want to level up really fast, you probably want to go at your best chances to level up the stat that you want to increase. So doing specific actions to make that stat grow is preferable. And I think it's the same thing in this case, is that, you know, your judgment in doing anything really should depend on having an accurate view of what are the chances of A, B, C, or D, or X, L, P, M, or Z, right? So that's great. And I guess this could also be meta in a way, because when you um because you also have to make a prediction if you're an author, like, okay, how is my audience going to react to the material that I have, right? What are the probabilities of that? Is it going to be a convincing argument? Are they going to be able to poke holes in it? So it's really interesting. You can use this for so many things. Again, I think she's really doing a good job of making strong statements and that are reasonable and that are hard to contest. If I was immature, I could probably try to contest some, but for the most part, I feel like these so far are good, pretty solid statements. Okay, moving on. Great, excellent. Next one, bets worth taking. So it mentions Elon Musk and his journey, and why sometimes it's worth taking a bet. And the thing that's struck out to me the most in this section was, uh, as crazy as it may be, and even though Elon Musk only had he truly believed that he had 10% chance of succeeding, it didn't matter to him because it wasn't about succeeding. And even if he didn't succeed, you can take the Thomas Edison approach and be like, well, I just found another way not to do it. So there's still going to be progress no matter what. And sometimes it's worth actually taking the chance. Sometimes there are times in life where we only have one time to make a bet, but you can really calculate, if a bet is worth taking, if you could see yourself doing that bet multiple times and being okay with it. So, for example, if Elon Musk, tries 10 times and he fails 9 times, if he succeeds in one thing or one business, then it's worth it to him. So that's kind of the idea of being able to actually do that. So that's great. Anything that I could challenge about that? No, I do believe that there are certain bets that are worth taking. I'm in the same kind of boat. There are times in my life when I've taken some pretty crazy risks, but it was worth it to me in the end. Actually, one of those was being homeless for about 8 months. That was a risk that I took. Um, and wow, was it life changing and eye opening. And um, you realize that when you have nothing, you have even more power. Um, it's really interesting, especially when you come out of it and then you start living a normal life and you realize that you're not tied down to specific burdens and chains and stuff like that. A lot of people, they fear things because they're afraid of what happens if I have nothing. Literally, if I had nothing, didn't even have my spouse with me at the time. We were still seeing each other, funny enough, but we were in different states, like literal states in the United States. Um, in terms of mentally, though, actually, no, I was in a pretty good state, and I learned so many things. I met with people in the Salvation Army because I had to go there to eat food. I got to meet someone there, a few people. We had like a small little family. Um, we played chess in Salvation Army. I played with, some of the people there. Life was very interesting. I still had a car. That was my safe haven car. Um, there was a church where I was able to park and sleep for the night, so I would always do that. Um, I had a 24-hour fitness gym membership, so I was able to still do, I could work out, shower, keep clean, stay healthy. Um, there were lots of things that I did, and I realized, wow, you know, it's when you have nothing and you've lived that way, it empowers you so much because there's nothing left to lose. You know how it's like to lose everything, and it's not that bad, you know? And that's sometimes this is kind of like how, I mean, we're getting to the point in the book where it's like, well, so how do you cope with things? How do you cope with reality, or cope with the idea that when you when you go for something that you might fail, you know, this is one of them, is when you have nothing. Fear somebody who has nothing left to lose, because they literally have nothing left to lose. And by putting yourself in a situation like that, and it does take, you have to be, maybe, yeah, you have to be a little crazy, I guess, because everybody in society tells you, no, 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 you shouldn't do that, survive, survive, survive. And I was surviving just fine. This country is good enough to the point where if you're intelligent, you can be homeless and you can be just fine, no problem. Um, so, yeah, that's an interesting side note. But yeah, let's get to the next part. Accepting variance gives you equanimity. Hmm. Awesome. So I totally get this next concept with accepting variance gives you equanimity. You can't always be right. It's impossible. You can't always be happy. That's impossible. You know, you can't always flip heads eternally, till kingdom comes if you do a coin toss. You know, it's impossible. So there is such thing as variance, and like being able to accept variance is key. Because you're like, okay, well, that's fine. You can separate what comes down to chance, and you can separate what comes down to your own skill, and what you can blame yourself for, and what you can credit yourself for. And you have a better idea, a clearer image of what you're to blame for and what you're clear of, then it's easier for you to take responsibility and understand when to change, when to adapt, when to readjust, and also when to reinforce, when to build up, what to continue doing right. Um, that's that is great. So that very very cool kind of section over there. Aha. So I'm in the next section already, coming to terms with risk. I'm halfway through it, but I have to pause because Julia brings up this a sentiment that I do agree with is that, you know, a lot of people who are afraid to fail, they'll do everything they think they can to succeed because they believe that, you know, failure is just really like it's the worst thing, and if you fail, then it'll crush you and you'll never be able to get back up. You'll be timid or whatever. But the opposite is true, is that when you do fail, when you do allow yourself to fail, then it does make you bolder. It makes you more courageous. It allows you to kind of like, it's liberating. And it that ties exactly to what I was mentioning earlier with being homeless. It was kind of an experiment for me to be homeless. I wanted to try it. Um, uh, Kind of like, it's not because I made really terrible decisions and now, you know, I was paying the price. It was like, no, I want to see how it is to have nothing. And failure is not really that bad. I think the idea of it scares people because everybody does want to be right. Everybody does want to succeed. Who goes, you know, doing something, going into an endeavor, wanting to fail? Some people do actually, though. Even me, like, I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I was one of the many few who ended up learning Japanese, is because you have to get rid of the fear that you're going to fail. You know, you will fail in the beginning when you're learning a language because it's impossible to be perfect. It's not about perfection. That's not what it is. It has nothing to deal with being perfect. It has nothing to deal with being wrong. Has nothing to do with it. Um, in order to learn a language, you need a certain level of resilience. You have to have the bounce back factor. You have to be bold. When you talk to somebody, you have to be confident. You have to make something that's foreign, you have to make it yours. You have to, basically, language acquisition is basically kind of like Mega Man, you know? You take a skill that's not yours and you absorb it and now it's yours. You know, acquisition is the same way. You know, and for me, I feel like I use that with not just language acquisition, but everything around me that I see, things that I like, you know, ideas from this author, for example, or ideas from my best friends, for example. You know, you take all these things and you put them together, and you acquire it. You know, it's a lot like foreign language acquisition. You know, it's foreign to you, and then it becomes a part of you. So that's great. Okay, moving on. Finishing up this section, she mentions somebody who says something that's very powerful. You know, in terms of taking a bet, knowing you're going to fail, and coming to terms with the possibility you might be failing. The quote is, "You want to get into a mental state where if the bad outcome comes to pass, you'll only nod your head and say, 'I knew this card was in the deck, and I knew the odds, and I would make the same bets again, given the same opportunities.'" That's great. That kind of like, it sets you up for like immunity, right? Maybe, you know, and fear is not. She also mentions it's not that people who are bold are fearless. You know, sometimes the fear is there, but you gotta just do it anyways. You gotta just put yourself out there. You know, it takes a certain level of courage to do that. Even like a lot of people who listen to YouTube videos or watch people who are out there, celebrities, low key celebrities, authors, you know, they really, you know, they it's easy to criticize, right? Criticize unfairly and just put your thoughts out, um, kind of not realizing that a lot of these people, I'm starting to notice it on a similar level. Even though, you know, I'm not really, you know, I'm doing this because I want to be famous or popular or anything. I just want to put my thoughts out there. And there are a few things that I would like, you know, to happen. You know, I would like there to be like a good conversation that comes out of this. I would like there to be kind of, I don't know, I would like this to help somebody. In the end, if none of that does happen, though, that's okay. Maybe I'm at risk of people probably, you know, criticizing me, my voice, my logic, how much I ramble or anything. That's okay though. That's fine. You know, there's that risk that's involved, but even so, you know, it's worth it. It's worth it. Doing something like this, you know, is even somewhat of a risk. So, anyways, with that said, Um, let's close up this chapter, last part. In the in the very end of this chapter, Julia really does make a point that, just like with the previous chapter, you know, there are ways of coping with, disappointment, anxiety, regret, and fear when you find out the truth. Um, and some of those coping mechanisms are self-deceiving while others are not. So why settle for the former when you can still have the truth in front of you? Same thing kind of applies to this situation, right? So there's this idea that, um, you know, you can either look at the bets and you can be like, okay, um, I'm going to approach this knowing the truth or not knowing the truth. And you can cope. There's different ways you can cope with failure. What makes more sense? Like deluding yourself until you fail and then blaming yourself for deluding yourself, or failing even though you knew all the things that were against you and being like, okay, well, sure, if this ends up happening, that's totally fine. I really don't care. It's not about failing, it's about the process, it's about succeeding, it's about seeing my limits and being happy with whatever, my efforts yield. So, in the end, this was a great, great chapter. Um, I can't find anything to criticize about it. This is helpful, I think, to people who need to face the truth and need to face reality, and to not be afraid. It's very empowering, and I like that. It's a great thing. So, looking at reversals, is there any way that I could see, deluding yourself to still be worth it, in the end? Well, I had an interview, or I went through the introduction of this book with my two best friends, my philosopher best friend and my anime best friend, two out of the four that are really, really, my top five. And we came across kind of like this hypothetical situation. I'm going to be uploading that too. But uh, basically, hypothetical situation. It's based off of a Netflix series called Love, Death, and Robots, I think it's called. There was an episode of people who were stranded in a space ship, or a space what is it called? Spaceport, I guess you can say. And uh, there's a probability that they're not going to be able to escape, and it's going to be like, they'll never get back home. And the truth is that the guy, the main character, he wakes up and he realizes that, see, that spaceport that they were supposed to be stranded on, it was actually infested by aliens, and the aliens were like, um, feeding him a false reality while sucking out him and his crew members like life force. And the last thing that happens when he dies is, before he dies, he realizes that his partner in the spaceport that, he had a romantic relationship with, was actually, the thing that was actually on him was like this big spider bug kind of thing, and he screams and then he dies. So for me, like, that crosses the line for me. It's like, would I like to know that before I die? Would I like to know the truth of that, and then use all these coping mechanisms to make me feel better about it? So for me, I feel like there is a line that that can't be, that will be very difficult to cross for certain people. It depends on the reality and their unreality, I guess, or their dream reality. Um, Again, you know, it's very nuanced and it's very extreme. So this argument doesn't work in most cases. And because this book is aimed to help people in most scenarios, then of course I totally agree. This is just an exception that I brought up because yes, there is going to be an exception. There's always going to be something that you can fire back with. But overall, even this thing that I put out there, You know, it's variant on, the different, each individual, what their lines are that they need to cross. And for the most part, I do believe that if you do take a good look at the truth, it can help you with your reality and it can help you succeed. And success is not even really. Mm, See, success can even be defined in a nuanced way because what is success to you? Success might even just be trying. So the moment you try, you succeed. So, for different people, success is different things. It all depends on what you as a person or an individual feel like is worth taking on. And I think that's pretty much it. That's my thoughts on this chapter. It's a great chapter. Um, I'm realizing that I'm saving a lot more energy by hearing the audiobook instead of reading it. Like reading the book out loud and then making comments. So with commenting, this might actually be more efficient. I hope that I'm getting better at, you know, rambling less and getting straight to the point. Um, and yeah, we'll see how things go. So everybody have a great day. I'll see you next time. And until then, take care.